Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Behind the Data Scientist. I'm Fatima Ramos. I will be your host today, and I'm very pleased to welcome Matthew Kirk, who is the principal machine learning scientist at Zeitworks. So, hi, Matthew, welcome.
Hey, thanks for having me. I started my career as a quantitative analyst in finance, working for a company that got bought by Morgan Stanley eventually. I didn't really like finance that much and found myself transitioning into startups. And so I've worked at startups for the past 10 or 11-ish years. And my background is very mathematics and statistics, but also engineering. So I've kind of mixed the two and become the data scientist, machine learning scientist type person. And that's what I've been doing the past 11, 12 years. Yeah. You know, data science is interesting because I was writing software for the most part. So Ruby on Rails websites, and somebody asked me, I know you have a background in mathematics, so could you do this other project? And this was around 2009, 2010-ish. And then I quickly found myself going down the rabbit hole of support vector machines and clustering. And I kind of got pulled into it through problems that we were facing. And yeah, I've just kind of been following that ever since. You know, it wasn't like a thing where I said, I'm going to go become a data scientist. I just kind of found myself on the wave pretty early. You know, the thing I like most is really the learning aspect to it. I find that, you know, I went to school. I have an undergrad degree and a master's degree, and that's great. But I find that in data science and engineering and software, I'm just constantly having to reinvent myself. And the technology that I use today is just very different than what I used 10 years ago. And I really enjoy that. I enjoy learning what's happening in the community, but then I also really enjoy learning from other people. So I find that the collaboration and the social aspect is really a lot of fun to me. So that's what I really like about it. You know, this is a hard question. I got some of these questions beforehand, and I've been grappling with this one. And you know, there's a lot of people I look up to in the community, and there's a lot of people that I look up to as artists and musicians. So I used to be a musician, but I think the role model for me, my dad passed away many years ago, but my dad is a huge role model to me because he was not college educated. He was like blue collar and super smart. And I find that I really embody a lot of what he did. So it's just very like, you know, wake up early in the morning, go get it attitude. And I think that's so important to especially data science. We just have to keep on going and keep trying things. And yeah, it's just a real positive attitude, I thought. Yeah, this is a good question because I get asked a variation of this question a lot when I do workshops and you know, teaching people machine learning, and some variations would be like, you know, what class should I take next, or like what should I read? And I think that it's so personal. You know, what I would recommend, and I recommend to most people, is to really understand your own personality and yourself. So like, what are your strengths and weaknesses? And get really clear. So when it comes to data science, like I really struggle with some of the higher math. I find that the really complicated mathematics is tough. So I tend to focus more on learning that stuff. But for other people, people will struggle with programming. So like they'll have a hard time writing Python, or maybe you're using R or something like that. It really depends on the person. So I very much recommend this approach of, taking, programming, mathematics, statistics, communication is another thing, and really rank yourself as to like how good are you at those, and then from there start to just improve yourself. So like work on the weaknesses and then lean into the strengths.
Definitely, it's important to go case by case and person by person, right?
Yeah, because we're all different and we all have different like gifts to bring to the world, and strengths and weaknesses. And I think it's just better to know that, as opposed to taking a very, broad stroke approach of like, well, you have to learn these things, or you have to learn PyTorch or TensorFlow or whatnot. It's like, it really depends. The biggest challenge that I see right now is, I don't know what the quote is, but like something like 80% of machine learning projects never actually make it into production. I think VentureBeat came out with this like a couple of years ago. The biggest challenge with machine learning is, or data science, machine learning, any of this stuff, is shipping it. And there's a big community right now around ML ops, so like machine learning operations, which I think is starting to get there, but it is a huge challenge. And so like my recommendation is learn cloud computing, learn operations, learn scaling, that type of stuff. It's hard, but it's so important, because really we're not done as data scientists until we impact a user. And that's kind of my perspective. Yeah, so I find that when I'm looking at new software to adopt, I really appreciate companies or organizations who build a good community. So it's interesting because like I will notice that, even big companies like Sonos, the speaker company, they have a lot of repositories on GitHub that are great. They're great tools, and I find that open source and building communities is very important, because you might have the best piece of technology in the world, but if nobody uses it, then it's kind of, it's kind of like the tree that falls over in a forest. It's like nobody cares. So I look at the community, and there's many ways to do that. I'll look at like stars on GitHub, or like what people are saying about it. But I also feel like there's just an attitude too of some companies are very inclusive and will listen to people using it, and then others are just like, well, we're amazing, like you should love to work with us. So I think it's just an attitude that I look for. I'm not going to call anybody out, but there are a few packages that are very large that are just hard to work with, and I think it's an attitude problem. Yeah, this is a big challenge for data scientists, is communication. And I find that there is a lot of challenges, especially with data science. So one of the biggest challenges is that like the area that we're operating within has a lot of terminology. So like, deep learning or stochastic gradient descent. And I find that I have to spend a lot of time walking that back into terminology that people already have. So being more specific about it, it's almost like I'm trying to talk to a 5-year-old. I mean, I'm not, but it really is like that, of using terms that everybody understands. And I think that that's a big challenge. I think also setting expectations is really tricky with data science, because unfortunately, there's been a lot of articles that say like machine learning is, reinventing the world. And so people's expectations are really high of machine learning and AI will do all these amazing things. And I have to be the bearer of bad news and say, no, it's not. So it's terminology and setting expectations are like really the hardest problems. So there's a couple of approaches that float around. There's crisp DM that people use. I don't even know what it stands for. That's a pretty good start. I tend to follow a simpler version, which is just my own mnemonic of I really it's TACT, tact. It's something that I follow myself because I have to remember it. And T is target. So like, what is the goal? Like, what are we targeting? What are we trying to do? Basically, A is arrange or acquire data. So go out and get some data. C is compose. So like compose a model, and then T is transmit, like ship it, put it somewhere. And that is the approach that I take. I find that getting the goal first, what are we after, is so important for data science, because otherwise it's just experimentation and you're just trying different things and seeing what works. And that's good too, but in a different way. And I think it's just better to have a frame of like, what are we trying to do? And from there, figure out what is the simplest approach that will get us there. I think the two big skills, one we've talked about a little bit before. I think operations is really important in 2022. Understanding operations from, it could be low code, it could be just cloud infrastructure. Just understanding it enough is so important. I would say the other second thing that's so important is communication skills. Being able to communicate effectively is huge in data science, because even if you find the best model in the world and nobody pays attention, it's kind of like it was all for naught. I would say that the other data science specific things, if somebody's looking to stretch themselves into new arenas, I think that reinforcement learning is really kind of the next thing that will probably take off. This is my prediction. And Torch RL, so PyTorch reinforcement learning, is a very interesting project. I just feel like we're going in that direction of less of this classification type machine learning into more multi-armed bandits or recommendation engines, and more of this dynamic type stuff. So I'm focused on those three things. So if other people want to focus on them, then great.
That's it. I wanted to thank you, Matthew, for joining us today and for taking the time and sharing your experience. And I really hope you come back in the future.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. This has been a lot of fun, really.